President Trump is doubling down on his pledge for a U.S. takeover of the Gaza Strip. Speaking on board Air Force One yesterday, the president also said some parts of the war-torn enclave could be rebuilt by other states in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think that it's a big mistake to allow people, the Palestinians or the people living in Gaza, to go back yet another time. And we don't want Hamas going back. And think of it as a big real estate site. And the United States is going to own it. As far as us rebuilding it, we may give it to other states in the Middle East to build sections of it.
Now, the president's comments come as Israeli negotiators are in Qatar for talks on the next phase of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Over the weekend, Hamas released 3 additional hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. But the thin and frail state of the hostages has sparked shock in Israel, with President Trump likening their appearance to Holocaust survivors. For more on the situation in the Middle East, I'm joined now by BBC News correspondent Yolande Knell. Yolande, President Trump repeating his pledge now for a U.S. takeover of Gaza. Help us understand the impact these comments are having in the region, especially as the negotiations, which are sensitive as they are and delicate, try to move for a second phase of the ceasefire deal.
Well, Errol, just to remind people, we're now about halfway through this initial 6-week stage in the ceasefire. And we're supposed to have these talks going on in Qatar, a mediating country, ultimately about advancing to a second stage. That's when we'd see a permanent end to the fighting in Gaza, and you'd see the remaining Israeli hostages being brought home. Now, President Trump's comments have really changed the context of all of this. You've had the Israeli Prime Minister embracing them, calling them revolutionary. He's now returned to Israel. He's expected to have quite a key cabinet meeting. And the Israeli media are saying that at the moment, his negotiating team in Doha don't really seem to have a mandate to advance. And the Prime Minister has appeared to want to keep the door open for a return to fighting in Gaza. That is something that's really worrying Israeli hostage families who want desperately to get their loved ones home. Palestinians and Arab states, of course, have totally rejected President Trump's plan. And we've also had Hamas hinting that this could even endanger the current ceasefire arrangements, saying that, Israel's reaction shows a lack of commitment to the ongoing deal.
And Yolande, some of the freed hostages from the first ceasefire agreement have told CBS News about the psychological and physical torture they went through. But now that we're seeing more hostages being released in such delicate physical shape, what are we learning about how they were treated?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, we all saw that those 3 men, the latest released, looked emaciated. They looked to be in worse physical health than the previous hostages that came out. They're said to have been suffering from malnutrition. Their families talking about how they went through physical as well as psychological abuse. They needed medical care but went untreated. But we've also had from them the first sign of life of another one of the Israeli hostages, the first sign of life in 16 months. For his family. His name's Alon Ahel. Today he would have been 24, celebrating with his family if he was home with them. His mother instead gave a very emotional interview to Israeli TV, talking about the desperate need to get him home, saying that he had been wounded in those 7th of October Hamas attacks and had shrapnel injuries and the likes. He desperately needed medical care. His name is not even on the list of hostages to come out in the first 6 weeks of the deal.
Wow. And meantime, what's happening in Gaza? We know people there are returning to its northern area following the Israeli withdrawal from certain corridors. But what are they returning to exactly?
Well, simply, Errol, near total destruction caused by, intense Israeli bombardment over the past 60 months. We're continuing to get these scenes of hundreds of Palestinians going, some of them in cars and in carts, to the north of the Gaza Strip. Now that Israel, in accordance with the ceasefire deal, has pulled out of this key military zone, basically dividing Gaza into a northern and southern part. Now, local journalists who are working with us have been talking to people. They continue to express defiance, saying that they want to go back even to the rubble of their homes. They will not be moved from there, they say. But we're getting humanitarian agencies really drawing attention to the fact that conditions in the north are dire, and they're saying that there's nearly 1 million people who are in need urgently of proper tents and shelters.
Yolande Knell, we appreciate your reporting, joining us from Jerusalem.